we're not a big place, you know.
We've got 30 million here, David.
Well, you know, I mean, it's very, very worrying.
Geographically, it's bigger, but, you know, that's 1 for every 10 of us.
It's a frightening situation. And you know what? We come third in the world, as you said earlier, behind China and Russia. You guys are 10th. Now, you know, that's not as bad as us, but you're getting there. And, you know, I'm sorry to say that some of the crazy stuff that we've allowed our government to get away with in the UK is beginning to be exported. And I really hope for your sakes and for the sake of your listeners that you guys don't go the way we have.
Well, it's a little too late for that. New York and Chicago pretty much already there. We're catching up to them here in Texas. One of the points you try to make in this film is, again, the film is Erasing David. I highly recommend this to people. It is so entertaining to watch. David, I want to tell you, I saved some of it. I didn't watch the end because I'm going to come see you tomorrow and at the screening at 11 o'clock at G-Tech. We'll tell people about that because I wanted to save the ending, so I had a good reason to go down and watch the film with you. You know, when you look at this and you think, well, you know, I'm a law-abiding citizen. You know, this is what people say in this country, though, when I tell them that there's a new law every 2 seconds, and you really can't, it's impossible to be a law-abiding citizen. Everybody in this country almost considered a criminal until they've proven themselves otherwise, but that's what people think. Oh, well, there's all this surveillance, and I'm being data mined, I've left this data wake, and everything I do is being, you know, kept track of and kept in databases by either private sources or commercial sources or government sources or police sources. But if I've done nothing wrong, I'm not breaking any laws, why should I care about all of this? This is what we're trying to get through to people here in this country. Do you have an answer to that?
I do have an answer. You know what? That was the most common thing that people said to me while I've been making this film. They'd say, why are you worried about this? I've got nothing to hide, so I should have nothing to fear. And my answer to that is, well, the problem is these databases go wrong in any number of ways, or they can be misappropriated, or your data can be put down in an incorrect way on them. You know, we meet a lot of people in the film who've had really painful experiences as a result of their identities being muddled up. And the problem is databases, on average, are 2% full of rubbish, and they're just wrong. And these databases get copied and they get sent around. And I think saying I've got nothing to hide, so I've got nothing to fear, is kind of true, so long as you're not in the 2% whose data gets corrupted. And the second point I'd make to those people would be, you know, maybe right now the governments that we have in the West are benign and they'll look after us. But we don't need to look back far in history to see what happens when governments go wrong. I mean, look at the East German government under the Stasi regime. When that came in, suddenly all of the data that had been held about citizens was used in a much more sinister way to begin to track them, to predict their moves, and to control them. And, you know, we shouldn't be so blinkered as to think that we're always going to have good governments. And so that's a really good reason for keeping hold of your data.
Well, I'm glad you said that because I would have added that as well, David. The fact of the matter is we don't know who's going to inherit our governments. And right now, as we're talking, they're working to put together a supranational global government, and people are going, well, why shouldn't we just go to one world government? I mean, everybody here is pretty nice. Gordon Brown's great. By the way, he's always calling for a new world order, or whatever that means. I think we know what it means, one world government. So even if, you know, the people we have now are benign, as you say, and trustworthy, which I find laughable, we don't know what will happen in the future if a Hitler will come in and take over and abuse this data. So that's a great point. The other point is that people often miss this, David, and that is if you're being databased, that can be used against you in civil cases. So if you're, for instance, getting a divorce, and, you know, there's a picture of you standing outside the strip club, you know, you could be taken to the cleaners, and if you have any political ambitions or maybe that could be used as a clause against you in the company you work for, you know, this could cause you an inordinate amount of problems. And even if you are a law-abiding citizen, because it's not illegal to go to a strip club, for instance. In some places it's not illegal to smoke a joint. But if you get caught and it can be used against you in a private civil case, you could lose everything.
And this is a really interesting point you brought up here, Jack, because in the UK, we have a big supermarket chain called Tesco's. You know, it's a little bit like your Walmart. And there was a case recently of a guy who slipped over in the aisle on some spilled yogurt. And he tripped over and sprained his ankle. And he complained and he raised a suit against Tesco's that they should have cleaned up this yogurt. Well, in their defense, they brought out his shopping records. which they were storing on the club card database, which, by the way, is one of the biggest databases in the UK. Those guys know a lot about what we all buy. And they said, you know what, this guy buys a lot of wine, he buys a lot of beer, and their lawyers made the case that he was probably drunk while he was shopping. And so they used that as a defense. This is a very sinister world where you can begin to start patching databases together. Let's compare your shopping records, Jack, with your IRS data, and let's cross-refer that to your travel plans. Now, when you put those three things together, patterns might emerge that, you really don't want to emerge.
We also here in the United States, I'm sure this never happens in the UK, David, but we have some overzealous, corrupt police that want to solve cases and get maybe some of them are running for political office, and if they can put a case to bed and have somebody who's guilty, whether they're guilty or not, it's a feather in their cap, and then they move up the so-called corporate police ladder. So if you're in the wrong place at the wrong time and you've got a history that is questionable, that could be used as circumstantial evidence, unfortunately, before a jury, if you even get a jury, and the jury, of course, won't be told about nullification rights, so, you're just in trouble. How many people here in this country have been, spent 30, 40 years on death row only to find out that they weren't guilty? Again, because of overzealous police. So, again, this circumstantial evidence, this data basing and camera technology can be used against you, again, if you're a law-abiding citizen. That's the point. Why aren't more law-abiding citizens interested in what we're talking about today, David?
I wish I knew the answer to that, Jack. I really do.
They don't want to face reality.
I think that's part of it. I think part of it is that it's just so easy, it's so convenient. We're sold the convenience of it, and so it's so convenient just to give away all your data. But what you've got to remember, and it's the point you made really well a minute ago, is that there is a potential point in the future at which you might want to reinvent yourself. You might want to become a different person, and we want to have the freedom to do that. I want to be able to choose if I want to redefine myself in the future, in terms of, religious beliefs or anything. I want to be able to have the freedom to do that. But the trouble is, when this data is captured, stored, and locked away, then people can always refer back to it. And I think it's particularly sinister for children. In the UK, we're collecting a lot of data about children. Yeah. And I really believe in the right that children should be able, if they need to reinvent themselves and move forward from any kind of problems that they might have in their upbringing. And that's going to be harder and harder when we track them.
There seems to be a significant amount of outrage, David, in the UK to this. People are beginning to wake up. They're getting really sick of it. We've got Obama, speaking of our children, they take the children's DNA here in Texas and all over the country upon birth. They're supposed to test for diseases. This is the pretext of which they collect this massive global DNA database. Now, with the DNA technology and manipulating DNA, with race-specific bioweapons. I'm not sure if you've done much research into that. I have. We're doing a big show on it on Wednesday. This is pretty dangerous, and they're supposed to get rid of this, but they just got caught here in Texas not getting rid of it. And then we've got our alleged president here, Obama, cousin Barry, because he's cousins with Dick Cheney. We'd love to point that out to our audience because it shows there isn't a lot of change going on there. I just read a story before you came on where Obama says that we need to DNA all people that are arrested, DNA test them, DNA database them, whether they're guilty of the charge or convicted of the charge. He says to, quote, tighten the grip around folks.
Jack, you know where he got that from? He got that from the UK. We do that in the UK. If you're arrested for a reportable offence in the UK, your DNA is taken and it's held, even if you're found innocent. And I have interviewed some young children, a 14-year-old girl who was accused of a robbery. She was later cleared, but during the arrest, her DNA was taken. It's still on record.
Let's pick up there when we come back, David, because we're going to commercial. David's right here in my hometown of Austin, Texas. His film, Erasing David, which is brilliant, will be showing tomorrow at 11 o'clock a.m. I will be there. We'll tell you how to go there. I think it's free. I want you to check it out. We'll be right back. Deadline Live. I'm your radio gun, Jack Blood. Stay with us.